what we're really looking at is what are the factors that influence faculty pay in business schools over time. So what are the kinds of rewards that they get, and what are the kinds of performance indicators that impact their salaries. First of all, I'm an immigrant to, a new Canadian, I'm an immigrant to Canada, and soon discovered that there was something called the Sunshine List. And the Sunshine List is a list of public salaries that are disclosed throughout the province in Ontario, and a couple other provinces in Canada do it as well, I think Alberta and Manitoba. I guess the idea of a Sunshine List was if you were making $100,000 or more, the sun shined on you, it was bright, everything was great, you earned, it was a lot of money, and there was an important view that transparency is essential, and we need to know how many of our public servants are making that kind of money. In business, most of the faculty members were already hired at that Sunshine List rate. So in '96, when it started, there were about 5,000 people on the Sunshine List. Today, there are well over 100,000. And if you wanted to hire even a new faculty member into a business school, the odds are they'd be immediately, from the very beginning, on the Sunshine List, making $100,000 or more. So I thought, here's an interesting opportunity of data that you don't see everywhere in the world. And it was interesting to me that we'd be in an environment where there'd be full transparency, where I could go up and look at, see what the colleague next to me is making, or the one down the hall. So I thought it was really interesting, combined with the fact that we had a colleague doing something that we don't often have in business schools, and my co-author who works in strategic human resource management. So this is kind of looking at the strategic factors. You know, how would you keep an employee? How would you incentivize them? What are the criteria by which you would measure productivity? So there was this opportunity of the data, and then on the other end, there's another opportunity of measurement. The interesting thing about faculty is we can measure, in many ways, precise indicators of their productivity. So we can measure their publications, we can measure their citations, we can measure, we can look at what university they came from. So we have their gender, their time and position. There's so many factors that we can measure that are very, very specific, that you would think that there would be a very, very close relationship between what people are paid and their performance measures. And this was a unique opportunity to look at ourselves. Well, I think the audience was probably ourselves, meaning faculty members. We're always interested, people are always interested in their own little world. And then secondarily, to universities, the management of universities. That would be the deans and the associate deans and the provosts and the people that actually make the financial decisions regarding salaries and what people make, because they're essentially the management layer. And I wasn't certain, and even am less certain now, that university management is actually clearly making decisions based on data, and to what extent they might be making decisions based on sort of local political legitimacy, if you will. Getting faculty members to supplement the data. So we had salary data. We could go on the web and get information about their CVs. We had a lot of questions, like if, for example, someone was not making the threshold of 100,000. There were very few, but there were some. That would only come from directly surveying. So a challenge was to get, I think in the end we got about 18% of the surveyed faculty members to respond to our questionnaire, but we were able to triangulate that with just going on the web and carefully reading their CVs. Other challenges were framing it in such a way that the audience, the readership, would understand it and would want to read it. I'd probably try and locate a place, a location, a country where they had public data, and I could observe over, in this case we used a 10-year period, I'd want to look at the same 10-year period to see, are our observations universal or not? Well, I think faculty members will be naturally interested, but I think really the audience should be these deans and the provosts, the people who are making decisions, because it appears from the paper that many of the decisions that they're making aren't, let's say they might be rational, but they may not be the best decisions for for the institutions. What I'm suggesting is that human capital should be rewarded based on its merit, and we should do a better job as a university evaluating the merits of the performance of our faculty. The universities are failing to reward the people that are most important to their future. We are talking about, after all, knowledge workers. And we're going to wind up with a situation where either a university follows a mediocre path, or those few that are exceptional and have the resources follow. And so that segmentation of the universities is a characteristic that doesn't need to happen. One could easily simply come up with measures that accurately reward both the external legitimacy and the internal legitimacy. If I'm reading it and I'm a professor and I want to enhance my salary, the read I'm going to have, the implications are I'm going to be changing universities relatively frequently as long as my career, I'm improving. So I probably will think about, well, I'm not going to stay here very long because I'll get a salary bump when I move, and then to get the next salary bump, I'm going to have to move to another university. So, or I'm going to make an exchange. I'm going to say, okay, I'll take less salary, even though I know I deserve more, because I like this place. I don't think that's a good model to pursue, but that's one implication. Another implication is if someone were to read the paper from a dean's perspective or from a provost's perspective, you might say, well, wait a minute, we've been rewarding some of the right things, but we've missed rewarding some of these other important things. And by failing to do that, we're losing some of our best performers, and we're impacting our institutions. So the positive analysis from the leadership perspective would be, let's see if we can come up with measures. Can we begin giving people financial rewards for taking on administrative roles outside the university in the profession that leads to reputation advantages that help our own university? Another implication is, well, I would probably say, okay, that's great that you have lots of publications, but can we in fact give an extra permanent financial reward for those that are publishing in higher quality journals, and because those higher quality journals will result in more citations down the road. So there are clear lessons to be learned from the leadership, should the leadership actually read the paper.